Hey everyone, this is Curb Knight, and today I'm going to be bringing you an updated Messiah deck list, including the new promo that just came out this month. So, as always, we'll go ahead and start with a little bit of an overview of Messiah and its place in the meta. So, I think Messiah is somewhat a solid deck, at least my build. Obviously it has to be my build. My build's the only build that actually works. But I think that it can compete. I think this is kind of like a B tier deck. If you know what you're doing and you know your matchups, you can definitely steal a couple games. But at the end of the day, the fact really is that this deck is not up to par with a lot of the meta currently. So if you are going to be playing this is going to be, of course, an uphill battle. But, you know, you do definitely have a lot of advantages. You have an amazing late game. You've got pretty decent turn 4s/3s, basically your stride turns. But, you know, you still do have the same weaknesses. The promo did a little bit to patch up some of the weaknesses, but it's also made the deck just a tiny bit more clunky, as we'll go ahead and review. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and hop straight. Alright, so as always, we are going to be starting off with the ride line, which of course is going to be comprised of the Neon Messiah, Asleep, Awaking, and of course, Alter Ego Messiah. This is your standard ride line, kind of the only one you can play. The only thing that is you can actually change is the grade 2, because your grade 0 is your generic D starter, and then the grade 1 is important because once it's ridden over the Neon Messiah, you get a draw card, and then you get your crest, which you need in order to actually be able to stride. Now the Awakening Messiah is that when he's in the soul and you place your grade 4 Messiah, so basically when you stride, you call him to Brigard, and then if you call, you soul charge. And then when he is unlocked during your turn, you choose one of your units the same column as him, and you give it an extra 10k. As we'll see in this deck, this is technically a 20k boost, but we'll get to that once we get to it. And then of course we have Alter Ego Messiah. In case you don't know, this is just the signed or hot stamped copy. You can use old copies of Messiah for the grade 3 because they are exactly the same, and all the powers come from the crest. So GB2, when a locked card is unlocked, whether it's yours or your opponent's, you can Soul Blast 1 to draw a card, and that is 1 Soul Blast for every instance of unlocking and 1 draw for every soul. So that's what makes this deck kind of tanky, but the biggest problem is that you do kind of have to get to that point where you can actually stride and you unlock your GB2, and you need to have a decent amount of soul to like kind of draw so you're able to sustain yourself. And then his other skill, the stride skill, when he's stridden over, you counterblast 1 and lock one of your rear guards, and then you choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and then you lock it, and then your vanguard gets another 5k, which doesn't really matter that much, but it's always there for you to remember. Alright, so I guess we can also just quickly go over the crest. So the crest just lets you stride, but you can't ride anything that is not a Messiah. Your Messiahs become 13k base, and then of course the typical crest skill where you get plus 5k to your front row units for each face-up card in your G-zone. And then at the end of the turn, the one specific to Messiah, you unlock all of your opponent's locked cards, and then those units get bound. They do get bound face-up, which means that they don't work for Gandiva, but they do actually work for Shoujo Doji, and anything else that uses bound cards. Alright, so moving into the main deck, of course, I'm actually going to be starting off with just 1 copy of Alter Ego Messiah in the main deck. So Alter Ego Messiah is required to actually go into one of our strides, but unfortunately, I think just the fact that we've had to add so much more non-shield, I think that Alter Ego is the thing that has to be cut. Definitely still going to X-Lux is a very good play, and this definitely cuts down on your consistency to do that, but I think just like we're giving up consistency for X-Lix to have more consistency overall in the deck. So I think that it is kind of worth it. And because we're playing another card in the deck, we are playing technically like 2 copies of this, as we'll see later. Next up, of course, we do have the Stride Fodder Dragon. Can't play without this. So he is the Stride Fodder Dragon from set 13. When he is placed on rear or guardian circle, we only care about the rear because you do need to have a grade 4 either in your hand or on your van, which obviously we're only going to be having during our turn, so it's only going to be on rear. So when it's placed on rear, you can Soul Charge 1, and then he gets an extra 10k, so he becomes a very good beater if you do happen to go into that X-Lix turn, because he's probably going to be 33 on his own. And he also does Soul Charge, which kind of just enables Messiah's GB2, so very good in that sense as well. And then, of course, his other skill that is important, we're not going to talk about the Guardian because you can't actually use that one, but when he's discarded from hand while you're riding into a grade 3 or paying the cost for Stride, you get to draw a card. So he just replaces himself, just like an overall better copy of Astrolabe, just straight up better in almost every single way. The only reason he's a little bit worse than Astrolabe is that he doesn't keep the 10k at all times. He only keeps it for the turn, which is, I guess, a downside, but it's not really big enough of a downside to really matter. And then, of course, for our new card that we're adding to the deck, I am adding 3 copies of Prelude of Genesis, which I really love the name on this card. But this is the new order promo for Messiah. So you play with Counterblast 1 if you have the Alter Ego Crest. You choose a unit card from your drop with the Messiah name, you call it to your rearguard, and then you actually get to lock one of your opponent's rearguard. So this card actually means that now we can finally lock 2 cards on the opponent's board, so we have access to 2 removal. Now it is actually going to cost you 2 CB because you're going to need to CB 1 for this, and you're going to need to CB 1 for this, but sometimes it is going to be worth it. In a typical Messiah build, it might not be too big of a problem, because you have access to maybe something like Sacrifice, but we've catered the deck to kind of counterbalance the amount of counterblast we're using in the deck. But it does also actually have another skill, which is when it's discarded from your hand. When paying the cost for Stride, you choose one of your Vanguards or Hearts. Until the end of turn, reduce the next counterblast you pay for that card's abilities by CB1. So basically, if you discard this to Stride, you can use a Stride skill for free. So I started off by playing this card at 2, but I really did not like that I was not seeing it at all, because obviously this card is not searchable at all. You kind of just have to draw into it, which is not hard at all to do, but with all the amount of draw power that the deck has access to, but you do actually want to see it, and sometimes you want to discard it for Stride, which means you can't use the order, you can't play it and call something back. But essentially, this card is just playing more copies of the main guy that we really care about. You could theoretically get this back, but you're almost always just going to be getting back the Arrestor Messiah, and then just locking another opponent's card is just going to be pretty much always good. But 3 copies just so that we see it, and because we're playing so much more non-shield and so many more grade 3s, this card basically took out of my copies of Alter Ego Messiah. So we're playing 8 Stride Fodder, the same amount as we were before, but this time we kind of replaced it with this card, and so far it's been working out pretty good for me. Alright, so moving on into the grade 2s. We saw him a little bit earlier, but of course that is going to be the 4 copies of the Arrestor Messiah. This is honestly your most important card, your most important attacker, because he enables all of your locks and your combos. He is on GB1 when he attacks. That can be a Vanguard or Rearguard. If you have a Messiah Vanguard, he gets plus 5k, and at the end of the battle, he locks himself. So we definitely need this card. Is our biggest lock enabler, and he does it in the best way by locking himself, meaning that he is there to be unlocked by your Stride's skills, and he just enables you to get those 5 attacks every single turn. And honestly, just your best attacker, and the fact that we now have an order to just revive him, because he is a very big magnet for attacks. Like, people will swing their Vanguard in this just to get rid of it, but having the assurance of the fact that we can actually bring it back makes the deck just that little bit more consistent, because you have a lot more access to actually just having locked cards on the board. Because technically, if you combo this, you do have 2 locked cards that you can unlock. Granted, one of them is your opponent's, which you can definitely still unlock, because remember, you can unlock any cards. It doesn't just have to be your own if you desperately need it. But in most cases, you just would rather just unlock your things. Anyways, moving on. Of course, we are still playing the 4 copies of the Kalzur Klein. He is a 15k attacker if there is a locked card on board. And then at the end of the battle, he attacks. If you have an Alter Ego Crest, you can retire him. To look at the top 30 cards of your deck, you choose a unit card with grade equal to or less than your Vanguard for among them. You put it on your open rearguard as a locked card, and you put the rest on the bottom of the deck. So this card is the only other card that we're playing that enables locks, because he is kind of just like the second best. There's only 3 cards, I believe, that lock themselves or lock things on your board, and this is the second best, and I think Sacrifice is just honestly the worst. But, you know, he's there. He can help you dig for just like other pieces. He can help you dig for arresters. He can help you dig for just like random intercepts or grade 1s that you want to call his boosters. So sometimes you will call him out in the early game, just like swing and dig. The biggest problem with him is that he puts things to the bottom of the deck, which means if you see your OT in like a critical trigger, you have to put them to the bottom of the deck, and guess what? You're not seeing them this game. They're just not going to come up for you. You're just going to have to deal with that. But moving on, we do have still the 4 copies of Habitable Zone. Habitable Zone is the grade 2 cycle card from set 10. So when you discard from the hand during the ride phase, you Soul Blast and put him on the bottom of the deck in order to draw a card. So of course, you can actually use him to pay for Stride and still use that skill. So he's definitely great in that. But the main reason he's here is because he is kind of like taking out a loan on your soul. So normally you would have to wait until GB2 in order to Soul Blast when to draw a card, but what this card effectively does is allow you to convert that soul into draw earlier in the games, and I think that is desperately kind of needed because you need to keep up your advantage as much as possible in this deck. Like, sure, you're losing out on the soul and you desperately do want to keep that soul because every single soul is a draw, but like I said, you're getting a loan and you're just paying it forward. Once we get the new cycle cards from DZ BT1, we're probably just going to do a straight replace because that way we keep our soul and we still get the draw, because I don't think anything in this deck is really going to be using energy in the foreseeable future. And then, of course, the spicy tech card that I said in the last video definitely fixed Messiah. That's going to be the 4 copies of the Refurbishment Dock. So now I was actually considering bumping up the set order count because with 50 cards, it was a little bit harder to actually access this card. But I think that it's better to just like play the 4 of this and hope you run into it in order to just like enable a lot of your plays. But anyways, let's talk about the card. So you play with CB1, which is kind of cringe because you do need CB for a lot of things. But at the same time, this is probably the best set order that you can be playing because as soon as you put in the order zone, you get to draw a card. So it just replaces itself. It's basically CB1 to draw a card to cycle from your hand. And then it does actually have a second effect, which is super relevant, which is that all your grade 2 rear guards get boosts. So that Asleep Messiah that you call off your ride line, like half the time it's sitting in the back row. If you don't have this, it's just going to be a 10k booster. But when you play this, it now becomes a 20k booster because it gives 10k to the thing in front of it, and then it can also boost the thing in front of it. So you just get a stack of power just going into that. It technically also does make Klein into a 15k booster if you have like more than enough attackers, and it also makes Habitable Zones into 10k boosters, which is definitely pretty good. So I think that this deck is kind of still needed in Messiah. It does conflict a little bit now, I realize, with this, but ideally you would want to be playing this on your turn 2, and then of course you want to play this like turn 3 or 4 once you already have your Stride ability set up. Right, so getting into the grade 1s, we do of course have the card that pairs with the Refurbishment Dock, that being the Bulbul Mine. So Bulbul Mine, in my honest opinion, Bulbul Mine kind of fixes Messiah in almost every way. Comboing him with Refurbishment Dock just makes the deck so much more consistent. If we ever get a Bulbul Mine just for Messiah, then I think the deck honestly might go up to A tier just because Bulbul Mine is that good. So at the end of the battle, he boosts. If your order zone has a set order, you can put him into the soul and countercharge 1. So he fixes your CB issues. He gives you more soul, which converts into draws. What else is there to say? He's just such a solid card. The main issue we were never playing this in Messiah before is because we didn't have a set order, which is why we played the Refurbishment Dock to be both a really good combo card with the deck in general, but also to enable us to actually use that Bulbul Mine. So yeah, Bulbul Mine is at 3 copies right now because the way I see it, you could definitely bump this up to 4, and I did at a point, but I kind of cut it down because if you see Refurbishment Dock is fine on its own. If you don't see Refurbishment and you don't, well, if you see Refurbishment Dock without Bulbul Mine, that's fine. You still have the 10k boost from Sleep or Awakening Messiah. You still have your 10k boost, 15k boost, whatever. You got the cycle, cost of CB, whatever. But if you see the Bulbul Mine without Refurbishment Dock, Bulbul Mine is just an 8k vanilla. He can't do anything. So I'd much rather see this without this than this without this. So that's why he is just at 3, so that we don't actually see him too often, and we only see him when we really want to. And What you could replace one of them is definitely one of these. I am opting to do a 3-2 split on this guy. He is the Mega Grago from, what is this, like set 5 or something. This is what the original artwork looks like. This is the promo artwork. So whenever he boosts an attack that hits, you get a counter charge 1. So with the addition of the order, I feel the deck has become so much more CB heavy, and I wanted some extra ways to countercharge, and I kind of just figured that this is probably going to be your best bet instead of relying entirely on Bulb Mine. This gives you another copy instead of just playing 4 Bulb Mine. Now you're playing 5 counterchargers, and honestly, in most cases, he does a lot of the same job. Like if you have your first turn 2, you have this and Refurbishment Dock, you play Refurbishment Dock, you Counterblast 1, and then you call this behind your Vanguard, and then you swing at your Vanguard for 18. Chances are they're not going to block that, and that's going to just give you the counter charge. And then 9 times out of 10, this card is really good as a Vanguard booster, because they're either taking the Vanguard swing, or in most cases they're taking the Vanguard swing if they're like at 2 or 3, because like that's Vanguard ends up being like 38 on the first swing, so you might as well take it a lot of the time, and you just get a free counter charge out of that. So it's reusable, unlike Bulb Mine, but unlike Bulb Mine, it doesn't actually give you any soul, which is why he's at 2 and Bulb Mine is at 3, because Bulb Mine is just the overall better card in every situation. He's just here to kind of give you that additional counter charge that we might actually really need thanks to all the CB that we are using in the deck. And then for our last grade 1, we are actually playing just 1 copy of Destiny Dealer. So he is Stride Fodder. When you're paying for Stride, he can be discarded as a grade 3. And then if you have an Alter Ego Crest, you can discard him to search your deck or drop for a grade 3 with Messiah, add it to your hand, and of course you shuffle your deck afterwards. So this card serves 2 purposes. My deck tester definitely said he wanted to run this mostly because we have no way of shuffling our deck, and if you put a bunch of stuff on the bottom of the deck that you really want to see, like with Klein, this actually enables you to shuffle your deck and kind of get those things back in circulation. And then of course the other reason that he is still in the deck is because he's my second copy of Alter Ego Messiah in the main deck. So let's say I discard the Alter Ego Messiah because I don't need it right now. I can always use this. I can still shuffle the deck, get things back mixed up, and then just add the Messiah from the drop zone anyway. So he serves basically, and he's also Stride Fodder, so we are playing like 9 copies of Stride Fodder. Right, so just finishing off with the standard things. Of course, we are playing the 3 PG as well as the 1 Elementario. I think Elementario is still definitely just necessary, and you can play it, so why not? The trigger lineup is pretty standard, as we always do. 4 copies of the Decacop. He is a card that goes in Soul, so he is somewhat relevant in this deck, although most of the time you're just going to be keeping in hand, but that option is always there if you want to. Playing 4 more vanilla crits for a total of 8, because you do want to kill your opponent as fast as possible, and you do have a ton of power on your rearguard circles. Your typical turn, your first stride turn usually goes like 15-15, so the weenie attacks, and then it goes 38, 34, 40 if you have everything set up. So being able to get crits on those really big swings makes it that much more like PG or bust. And then of course, to increase those numbers, we are playing fronts. For one, the pattern for using fronts is absolutely perfect, because you can swing with your first 2 rear guards, and then you swing with your Vanguard, and then your front 2 rear guards technically restand, so you get and give an extra 10k to the entire front row. And it's also an additional shield value, which is super nice. Of course, playing the 4 heal. We could definitely play any counter heals if you really want to, but you know, I don't think it's overly necessary at this moment. I think Messiah is kind of tanky enough, and like a lot of your matchups you're going to be losing anyway, so you might as well keep that. And then of course, just our auto win bit button. Eldo Breath can just clean things out, especially with the amount of power. Like I said, one of your columns end up being like 30 and 30, and then you double that so they become like 60 and like what, and 65 and 70, which is kind of just insane if you hit it. But you know, sometimes, a lot of the times, you're just gonna end up drawing into it. All right, and then of course, just the G Zone. Obviously, we're just playing the maximum G Zone for Amnesty for Xlix. This isn't Xlix, this is Amnesty. So Amnesty is always your first stride, and sometimes your second stride. A lot of the times it is. So when attacks CB1, flip a G Zone. unlock any number of locked cards, and then choose 1 unit. It gets plus 5k for each card unlocked by this ability. So this is your main unflipper, and enables your 5 attacks because you just lock your 2 front rows with their abilities, or you call something as locked, and then of course you just unlock them and attack with them again, giving one of them an additional like 15k power usually, and then boosting the other column with Awaking. And of course, Xlix is your other your main finisher. You have to discard the Messiah to stride into it, but when it attacks you, counterblast 1, you unlock any number of locked cards, and then if you unlock a card, you choose the same number of rear guards as unlocked cards, and you restand them, and then all your front row units get an extra 10k, and this unit gets an additional crit. So a really big finisher. If they can't block this, they're kind of just dead. And this card is what you need in order to enable the Stride Fodder Dragon, because normally you would only get 4 attacks with him, but you can restand him with Xlix by unlocking 1 card. Alright, so as always, we're going to go ahead and finish off with just a quick test hand. So for this test hand, we are of course going to be going second, because that is what you're always going to be doing since you do have the choice now. If you have the choice, you always go second. So we're keeping this hand. We have an Arrestor, which is an important piece. We have a Habitable Zone, which is going to be a great discard, and we do also have Stride Fodder, which are things that are absolutely necessary. So we get another Habitable Zone, which is definitely going to be pretty good. It does kind of suck that we're going to be soul blasting a lot of soul, but you know, it's not like we're soul blasting for nothing. We of course are still just soul blasting in order to get a draw. So of course, going second here, we're going to go ahead and stand up, draw. For turn, we get another Arrestor, which is definitely very cool. As we discard the Habitable Zone, we're going to use the skill of going second to draw a card. We're going to use the skill of Asleep Messiah to get our crest and draw a card, and then we're going to use the skill of Habitable Zone to soul blast and put it on the bottom of the deck and draw a 3rd card. So we're going to get a total of 3 cards off the top. So it's looking pretty good. We've got another lock combo piece, and we've got the Refurbishment dock, meaning that our Bull Mines are going to be live once we get into them. But of course, we are going to have to take maybe 1 or 2 damage. We're going to get a crit there, so we're probably not going to be taking anything else. We've got the Bull Mine. In this situation, I guess we just discard the Habitable Zone. I don't know why I'm thinking. Just go ahead and ride up, use the skill to Soul Blast, and then of course just draw another card. So we are definitely getting a loan on our soul. We have absolutely 0 soul at this moment, but of course we can fix that. We'll use our Refurbishment dock to draw another card. Unfortunately, drawing into the OT there. We're probably just going to go ahead and call the Bull Mine, call out the Klein. Since I have so many lockers, I can definitely afford to do a little early game aggression, retiring him to check the top 3 cards of the deck, and then of course calling this as locked. These 2 cards are going to go to the bottom of the deck, unfortunately, but hopefully we can see our copy of Destiny Dealer, which will enable us to actually, you know, shuffle the deck and get those cards back. So we're going to swing, going to drive check into a heal. We're going to assume we're heal. So since we don't have anything to countercharge, we'll just leave Bull Mine there for the time being. Go ahead and unlock this during the end phase. We're probably going to want to take at least 2 damage here as they attack us. Hopefully they attack us enough so that to the point where we can't actually take that 2 damage, because we do want 2 CB. If we don't, it's not the end. If we don't have that 2 CB, it's not the end of the world, but it does kind of suck. So we're going to discard the Stride Fodder Dragon in order to ride up into grade 3. Its skill is going to let us draw a card, and then of course we're going to discard this for Stride in order to stride into the Amnesty Messiah. And of course the skill once again is going to let us draw another card. Arousal skill is going to be called out, and Soul Charging 1, Soul Charging the Elementary, not great. But you know, it is what it is. We're going to go ahead and counterblast, lock this, and then lock a card on our opponent's board. And then, of course, we do kind of have full combo. We can go ahead and call this here, and of course, call another Arrestor Messiah here. So now we have some on-hit pressure here, because if they let this hit, then we get a counter charge. But if not, then, you know, it's still pressure. So this is 15. Maybe they throw down a 5k guard. The other thing we could do is not boost here, so that this attack has a lot more pressure on the second swing, which I think we might actually end up doing. So go ahead and go 15. We could go 23, but it's still just a 15k block, so it's not overly worth it, as we're going to go ahead and swing, use the skill to counterblast 1, unlock the 3 cards, and I think we're still going to give 15k here to make it that much more pressure, as we're going to go ahead and do our triple drive. First is going to be a Refurbishment dock, something we really don't want to see any more of, and then third check, going to be getting triple blanks there. I'm going to use the Bull Mine skill to slide it into Soul and counter charge 1. We're going to go ahead and swing here. Probably swinging this first because it is in general smaller, and then they might want to take a defensive or bet on a defensive here. Let's say you take it, so that gets this counter charge 1 again. And then of course we have this other column, which I believe is at 40. This should be at 43. This is at 20. We did have to flip here. So this is a 15k attacker. The crest makes it into a 20k. It gets another 10k from a Sleep Messiah, as well as the boost, so that puts it at 45. 45? No, 40. Just 40 straight, because I already calculated the extra 5k from attacking. So we're going to go ahead, and these cards are locked after they attack, and we're going to unlock them. We only have 2 soul. We're going to go ahead and fire it off in order to draw 2 more cards. So we have a ton of cards in hand. We should have no problem living through this first turn. We're going to go ahead and take like maybe 1 damage. They're probably going to attack into our arresters. We might have to actually protect one of them, maybe even with a PG if they really want to swing into it. But we're going to go ahead and go into our second stride turn, drawing a card here. So we don't actually have very good discard fodder. So what I'm going to actually do here is discard these 2 cards, because they're probably like the least useful of all the cards in my hand, and we're going to go ahead and stride into another Amnesty. Using Stride Scale, we get a Counterblast 1, lock this card. In this instance, if we actually had access to a, what's it called? The Order card, which is, like I said, it sometimes can be pretty hard to actually get to it, which it would be really good in this instance because I can just call back one of the arresters. But thankfully, I drew into another one. So we just do the same thing over again. 25 this time. I think we can commit it because it's going to be so much bigger next. So we go 25, 33. Yeah, 33. And then, of course, we swing this. Counterblast 1. Unlock all of this. 10k here, 15k here. Triple drive 1, 2, 3, and we still just have not seen the Order, which is unfortunate, but also at the same time we don't really need it. So I wonder how much further it was taken for us to actually get to a single copy of the Order. There it is. Yeah, sometimes you do dig for it and you don't get it when you sometimes might want it, but at the same time, you know, it is also a not shield card. Right, so that is going to do it for my updated Messiah deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to do all those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.